Hey, everybody, welcome to Fatso Radio, episode number 75. And tonight I get into meat again. But Carlo, you always talking about meat. Yeah, that's right. I'm always talking about meat. I'm always telling you how I'm cooking it. I'm always telling you how much I love it. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit more tonight. Different ways of preparing meat. How do I do it? Do I use 57,000 ingredients? Do I have complex ways of doing it? Or is it very simple? It's very simple, but I'm going to get into it. Before we that, let's talk about our sponsor. Fatso Radio is sponsored by Volpe Martial Arts. That's right. Volpe Martial Arts is Kitchener-Waterloo's hottest, newest Kung Fu and Hapkido school. Sifu Adam Volpe is my brother. He brings Hapkido, Korean martial art, and Kung Fu, a Chinese martial art, together. Amazing fusion, self-defense, forms, weapons, sparring. We do it all there, folks. Check it out, volpemartialarts.com. This episode is also brought to you by Papaearth, Papaearth.ca. Papaearth is a locally sourced and locally delivered food company. That's exactly what it is. They deliver meat, poultry, fish, eggs, all that stuff in Alberta and Ontario. Give them a shout. Check out their website, papaearth.ca, and don't forget to use the code word, discount code Fatso Meat. It'll save you $10 off a small box or $20 off a large box. Folks, my pleasure to bring this episode to you July 10th. I can't believe the summer is going by so fast. It's amazing. I'm doing well. I hope everybody's doing well. And I thank you all for your time and everything and your love. Lily, take it away.
Fatso Radio, the really great podcast show.
Fatso Radio, the really great podcast show.
So get your butt and get in your chair.
Don't eat your nails and don't pull your hair.
We'll talk about chicken or talk about steak.
We'll talk about fat, for goodness sake.
Fatso, the really great podcast show.
Fatso, our very first podcast show.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Fatso Radio, episode number 75. How you doing? All right, folks, let's get right into it. Today's episode, I want to talk about meat. I want to talk about how I prepare my meat, how I'm cooking it, whatever I'm doing, whether I'm spicing it or putting a rub on it, whether it's a marinade. I'm going to talk about how I do it. I post a lot of photos on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm always sharing my steaks and my meat. So I want to get into that. A lot of people ask me how I do it, and I want to really get into that. But before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about just what it's like being a foodie in general and how that's changed for me. I do want to talk about that because I am that person, and I would have always been that person up till today, and I am still that person that considers myself a foodie, right? I have a lot of friends that consider themselves foodies, whether they eat any kind of food, right? If you love food, you consider yourself a foodie. I'm still considered a foodie. I would definitely consider myself a foodie, but things have changed a lot. And I want to explain, I guess, a little bit how they've changed. So what I thought was, okay, this is the way I used to be. I used to think about food all the time, quite honestly. I used to think about it, when I was preparing the food for the meal, I was thinking about it when I was eating the meal. I was even thinking about it after the meal. I was thinking about food all the time. And I don't know if this is the same for everybody, but I can just explain myself. Again, folks, I'm not a doctor. Let's get it right off the bat. I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving you medical advice, but I'm just giving you personal advice, right? So what I struggled with and what I experienced with the whole idea of being a foodie was that I always thought about food and I was always thinking about food, but I never knew why. I'm thinking now, after this time has passed and I've lost some weight and I've changed a lot of my habits, I'm thinking now that what always made me thinking about food, or was always kind of thinking about the next meal, was really my addiction to sugar and my addiction to carbohydrates. And I really do think that that's the role that being a foodie, or I guess, I don't know how I'm trying to say it, but I guess what I'm trying to say was my version of being a foodie was maybe fueled by my addiction to carbs, my addiction to food in general, right? And I think that they play on each other, and I think that it's quite complex, right? When we're talking about addictions, and I definitely think that I have a food addiction. I think that I have a better handle of it now. Of course, it's been years, but my whole life, I battled whether it was eating when I was happy, eating when I was not happy. Food is such a central part of a lot of people's life, my life included, that it was not always used in a healthy way. Like other things, I guess, right? Like drugs, like alcohol, like cigarettes, like so many things. Food absolutely is a powerful, powerful substance. Not only because you can get sick and you can get addicted, and it can draw, or it can create, or it can, harvest or harness or kind of manifest or facilitate some bad habits or some bad behaviors, but it's also addicting. So, but it's also, we also need it. We also need to eat food. So it's a very complex thing. But one of the things that I guess the reason why I'm talking about being a foodie is that one of the things I noticed when I was going through my journey of losing weight. I'm still losing weight, right? And I'm still going through this journey. But one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm still noticing now, is that I'm just not thinking about food anymore as much, right? If I was thinking about food, I mean, I joke and say that I was thinking about it 24 hours a day, but I wasn't. If I was thinking about food, maybe a total of 6 or 3 or 7 hours a day or whatever it was, probably less than that. But I felt like on occasion throughout the day, on and off, maybe there was 1 or 2 hours where I wasn't thinking about it, but I was thinking about it quite often, right? So not straight, but throughout the day, very, very often. Now I don't think about food throughout the day. I really don't. I think about food either when I kind of planning ahead. I like to have a big meal because friends are coming over, or family's coming over. I still love that, right? So making brisket, making ribs, making fish, and I'll get into that later. I get excited for that stuff. And I get excited probably more because my family's coming over, because my friends are coming, and I love to see them, and I love to hug them and kiss them and joke and have a great time. But also with the food, I love food, and I love good food, right? Excuse me, like anybody does, like anybody who considers himself a foodie or a connoisseur of any sort. If you like woodworking, you're going to want good woodworking, right? And the same thing, if you like wine, you're going to probably go for good wine, or at least what is good to you, right? Into your palate, into your whatever you're looking for. So and food is the same thing, right? So I noticed as I was starting to lose weight, and as I was breaking the kind of the addiction to the carbs, the garbage, right? The sugars, even fruit for that matter. When I was breaking the addiction to all those sugars all the time, I was noticing that I just wasn't thinking about food. So oftentimes when people will say, well, I'm just not hungry on this diet, on the keto diet, or even people that are going carnivore, a lot of times they're thinking, or they oftentimes say, I eat once a day, or I eat twice a day, and I just don't think about it as much, or sometimes I forget to eat. A lot of people say that. And that actually speaks to it. To me, that speaks to the idea that you're satiated, you're satisfied, your body is happy with what it has, right? In my idea, and this makes complete sense to me, but if you eat a meal and you're good for 4 or 5 hours, right? 6, 7, 8 hours, 9, even 12 hours later, that's probably a pretty good choice of meal. I don't think you're going to have a meal of 3, 4, even 5 Pop-Tarts, and you're going to last 12 hours. If you can, you're probably already fat adapted. You're probably already keto adapted anyway, so you can probably just about do anything. But really, the standard Western, standard American, standard Canadian diet, the standard shitty version of a Canadian, or a standard shitty version of an American diet, let's say, where there's a lot of processed carbohydrates, a lot of processed foods in general, a lot of processed seed oils. The Pop-Tart is basically the worst, or the best version of the best example of a terrible food source. But you can eat 4 or 5 of those, even 10 of those at breakfast, whatever, and you may be able to eat 4 or 5 times the calories even that you may get from a steak and eggs or something like that, or even just bacon and eggs, or even whatever, any kind of meat or cheese or something, animal foods. But it's not going to last. Those Pop-Tarts are not going to last all that time. So back, without getting too sidetracked, I really had an adjustment. I was like, I'm the foodie. I'm the son of a chef. I'm the guy who grew up in a restaurant, who grew up in the catering business, who grew up for a couple of years, who grew up always being around food, always serving food, always preparing food, and always eating food. I ran into the situation where it's almost like a crisis, or a identity crisis, well, sort of, but an foodie crisis, I guess, or whatever that's called. But it was like, well, I'm a foodie, but I don't care about preparing these foods anymore. I don't. Maybe I just answered my own question, but I think maybe part of it was that I wasn't spending time preparing a lot of these foods anymore. I mean, I can spend an hour maybe preparing a certain roast, or preparing, but you don't need to prepare it. You don't need to spend that much time. And maybe that's why as well, as I got more and more into the keto, and as I got deeper and deeper into the keto / carnivore, the meals are just easier, right? So there's kind of a two tier. Maybe there's two reasons why I'm not thinking about food as much anymore. When I'm eating, I'm satisfied, I'm not hungry, I'm not craving, right? I'm not having those sugar cravings throughout the day. And for a lot of people's opinions, the sugar cravings are what you really consider hunger pains, or what we sometimes think is us being hungry. Oftentimes it's just a low sugar, right? Or your sugar has dropped. Your blood sugar rather has dropped. Your blood glucose levels has dropped. And when our glucose levels drop, that's when we want to go to those sugary foods, or when we really want to go to any foods, of course, but specifically the sugary foods will bring your glucose levels back up, make you feel better, right? And then you'll be on your way. maybe another hour, maybe another 2 hours, depends, everybody's different, right? But for a lot of people, that comes down again, and that they have a crash. If you're not eating glucose, or if you're not eating carbohydrates, you're not going to have a spike and a crash. I mean, if you eat a lot of protein, if you eat a big heavy meat meal, your insulin may spike a little bit, right? Your glucose may spike a little bit, because insulin will be needed, right, in your body. But it's nothing like having a carbohydrate meal, nothing at all like having a carbohydrate meal. So that's it. I don't know if that's my advice or not, but that's kind of how I feel about being a foodie. Like I said, I always love food, and I still love food. But again, like back to the whole, or sorry, I guess alongside with the whole idea that I'm not as hungry as often, preparing the meals are easier now, right? So if I eat a steak, it's salt and pepper, if that. It's usually just salt. If I'm eating a roast, I'm seasoning that roast, and I'll get into what I put, but it's really just 4 or 5 ingredients, put it in, forget about it. 6 hours later or 5 hours later. Even something as kind of that needs attention as much as something like stir fry, right? Where you got to be there, you got to flip it, you got to stir it, you got to do whatever you're doing. Even that, you can be simple as maybe some soy sauce, maybe some garlic, whatever. You know what I mean? I tend to put salt in every single dish, and I'll get into that as well. But it's really quite simple. And as I get into the more simple preparations, which is like salt, it can't get any more than salt. I mean, or can't get any easier than just salt. And I'm not going to remove salt because I do need it. You know, I'll get into that, and I'm sure I've gotten into it in the past. But I want to do another episode on salt. I'd love to get Dr. Nicola Antonio, I believe his name is. So I'm going to try and get a hold of him. He's the salt doctor. Trying to get him on the Fatso radio podcast. But again, like I said, once we get more and more simple, or as I get to the more and more simple levels of eating, it's less ingredients, it's less preparation, and even sometimes less cooking. I mean, I've eaten it kind of medium rare or rare for years now, but you know, years ago it was well done. So it changes all the time. But something like how I like my steak hasn't changed, but how you prepare your food can definitely change, but it doesn't have to be complicated at all. So again, that's something I just want to talk about being a foodie. Like I said, I still love food, of course, and I still love preparing food, but I've had a bit of a transition. So it's kind of an adjustment, a good adjustment, of course, because I don't want to think about food all day long, right? It was a bit of a burden, to be honest with you. I don't know if anybody listening or watching considers it a bit of a burden to think about food. I did. I mean, there's many things, many other things you want to think about, and I would have rather have thought about, and now that I can think about, other than food, right? But like I said, like anything else, I still have that part inside of me that, you know, like I said, grew up in the restaurant business, that would like to prepare things perfectly, or you know, as best as I can. And I'll get into my preparations. So when family comes over or friends come over, and I'll have a roast ready or I have a brisket ready, like, yeah, believe me, I put my attention into that, and it's going to be as best as I can. But it's not complicated. It's really not. So I want to get into that. And I want to kind of get into all the different types of, not different types of meat only, but all the different types of, or ways of kind of preparations of how I'm cooking and how I'm preparing it. So the first thing I want to get into, or the first example, I guess, rather, of, or the type of cooking that I want to get into, is slow roasting. Slow roasting is probably my favorite type of cooking method for meat. For me, it's if you have time, and by God, we all have time. It's just a matter of preparing a little bit the night before or a couple hours before, but we all have time. But the slow roast is amazing for me because it takes virtually any piece of meat. And you may think that I'm being super, super simple and super, you may think I'm being rudimentary, and I'm not getting into great detail. I'm not getting into great complexity on how I can expand on different types of rubs and marinades and soaking. Yeah, you can do a million different things, but I'm going to get to a very simple, cut and dry, no bullshit way to have amazing food, okay? Slow roasting. Here's an example. You take a roast, and it's going to depend, of course, how, depending on how big it is, or depending on how much the roast weighs, of course, it's going to change how long it spends in the oven. So for example, if you have a 5-pound roast, or I had a 5-pound brisket the other day, it can go in the oven for 5 hours. It can go in the oven for 4 or 5 hours, or even 6 hours. I mean, but something like, a 1-pound roast won't be able to go in. I wouldn't put it in the oven for 5 or 6 hours, but if you did, you can still just put it lower, right? So it's all about kind of how you do it. And there's some simple ways to find, some simple methods online as far as your ratio, how much time and what kind of heat. But I have some generalities I want to talk about, some rules of thumb that I like to use. I hate using that term, rule of thumb, because it's a terrible term. I'll talk about it one day. But anyway, I have some general rules that I use, and it's really easy, okay? Here it is for beef. For brisket or any kind of a big roast that has a lot of fat in it, right? Something that you want to cook a long time. Anything that has any connective tissue, like the brisket has some connective tissue in it. Anything that has any bones in it. Anything that is a big chunk of meat, and you want to cook and melt and render that fat and have that fat cook slowly and fall over that meat and moisturize and basically baste that meat as it's cooking. That's what you want to do, right? You want to take a big chunk of meat. It can be pork. It could be a lamb. I did lamb ribs. I did lamb legs. I did pork tenderloin. I did pork ribs, brisket. I've done pork shoulder in there. Oh my God, it was amazing. You can do anything, right? And different cuts of meat, of course, have different types of or different methods of cooking. Different methods of cooking different cuts of meat work best, of course, right? But you can really do anything you want, and you're not going to wreck anything by going low and slow. That's why I really love slow roasting. So I have an amazing oven here. I'm so fortunate. When we got this house, it was an awesome oven, a gas convection oven, a Garland, a beautiful oven. That's an oven where you can put it in there. I set it usually to around 225 or even 250, usually just below 250. And I said, it's about 230, about 250. But I set it usually about 4 or 5 hours, right? And at first I used to really monitor it closely, you know, every hour, go in and check on it as I was, you know, new. And like you, and I would suggest that as well. If you're doing something for 4 or 5 hours the first time, check on it, see how it's going. You're not going to wreck it, right? But when in doubt, just let it go in there, let it stay in there. You're not cooking it too hot, so you're not going to ruin it. At 250, you can go all day long. You can even go 8 hours, right? So it doesn't, you're not going to hurt that. Or you're not going to hurt it at all. As far as a rub, you can do this for anything. You'll have different recipes for everybody. Everybody will say, you know, this spice works good with this or whatever. But here's what you need. You absolutely need salt. Are you ready? You absolutely need salt. You have to put salt all over that piece of meat that you're going to cook. You need salt, right? We talk about on the carnivore diet or in the keto diet, the need for sodium, the need for potassium, the need for magnesium, the need for chloride. You need these electrolytes, and they come in salt. Use a good Himalayan salt or good old world salt, whether it's a Redmond clay salt or whether just any old salt, not that bleached shit that you get in a box that has sugar in it. If you look on your box of salt, table salt or whatever, and you see dextrose in it, toss it out the door. You don't want sugar with salt. If you're gonna eat sugar, go have sugar. Right? If you're gonna have salt, have salt. Have good salt. No anti-caking agents or anything like that. That's what sugar does. It prevents it from sticking together, but you don't need that. Just get real good salt. Put salt around this piece of meat. Let's take a brisket, for example. Salt, onion powder if you like, garlic if you like, paprika if you like, black pepper if you like. A lot of people love black pepper on brisket. Put it on there. What else do you want? You want to put some oregano on there? Put some oregano if you like. If you don't, great, no problem. It's so simple, folks. Try it with salt and pepper to start. Salt, pepper, and onion and garlic. Try that, and paprika or whatever. Like, so simple. And if you want to add the mustard into it next time, if you want to add some celery, you know, next time, it's very easy. The idea is you're going to season this meat, right? The outside of it, coat it all, get every part of that meat. You're going to put it in the oven. This thing is going to cook slowly, and it's going to take all of those spices. It's going to try and get inside the meat. The meat is going to sweat. The meat is going to juice and melt and cook, and all this wonderful stuff is going to happen. And it's going to slow roast. Those spices and those flavors are going to marinate and be infused into the meat as the meat melts, as the fat melts. And that's why you want a piece of meat that has some fat in it, right? Because it can, not only do we want fat, hey, Fatso Radio, of course we want fat, but it's fat is the most delicious part of your meal. That's what gives your steak flavor. That's what gives your roast flavor. That's what gives your chicken flavor. Because that's what gives your turkey flavor. It's the fat in the meat. So that's what I do for slow roast. You can do that with pork shoulder, like I said. You can do that with lamb. You can do that, with anything. I haven't done a slow roasted fish. I'm sure you could. Probably be a little dry because fish cooks pretty quick. But something has a lot of, something that's big, right? Something that's dense, something that's heavy and has a lot of fat. And the more connective tissue something has, or the more joints or, you know, cartilage or anything like that, the longer you can cook it and the longer it will enjoy, or the longer that dish will benefit from a low, slow cook. All right. And if you really want to break it down, you can even add more liquid to it. But I cook them dry a lot of times. But you can add a little bit of liquid to the bottom of the pan if you need to cook it a little longer. If you want to make sure it stays, you know, moist, you can do that. Again, pork, I use basically the same seasoning, right? A little bit more. I like to use a little more onion with pork. I don't know. I like to use a little more garlic with pork. I don't know. But really, it's anything. You know, I essentially have a kind of a a handful of secret spices that I put with everything. It's not even a secret, but it's kind of the spices I just talked about. And I can do it. You can do it with anything. So slow roasting, right? Any kind of meat, put it in. I mean, you think about it. It's an ancient, primitive, prehistoric way of cooking, right? I mean, they got a hot oven, right? Whether they dug a hole, had coals in it, put the food in the hole, cover it up with sand or whatever. You have a oven, however you wrap that food up to preserve it, whether it's in leaves or, I mean, these days you have tin foil and things like that, but aluminum foil rather, and things like that. But it's a very essential, slow way of just cooking something, an old-fashioned way of cooking. You don't need any special utensils. You just need something hot, throw it in there, right? Probably even an older way, I guess, would be barbecuing or just cooking over an open flame. Before there were, the Webers out there and the Traeger grills and everything, there was just wood and a fire and a stick, and you would probably roast your animal over that. So, that's kind of a combination between a roast that guest and a barbecue, but really that brings to mind barbecue. And you can barbecue anything, folks. You can barbecue fish. You can barbecue steaks, of course. You can barbecue pork chops. You can barbecue lamb chops, veal. You can barbecue ostrich, any bird, any animal that you can eat, I've barbecued. Any animal that I've had, I've probably barbecued. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I haven't barbecued before. I barbecued chicken, I barbecued turkey, pork, lamb, emu, all kinds of fish. Steak, I love steak I love salmon on the barbecue. Anything you want, right? So the same idea, you're over hot flames. It's so simple, folks, so simple. What you need, if anybody ever asks you, what spice do you need salt. I'm telling you, you need salt on all your food. You don't have to put a lot of salt, but you need a little bit of salt on all your food because you need to taste that food, and salt brings out the taste. Also, you need that sodium. You need those electrolytes. I'm telling you, you need those electrolytes. You don't need the crap sugar. You don't need the crap garbage, other things that you're eating if they're bad for you, but you do need salt, right? So it's all about, I'm not going to say it's all about balance, but it's all about having the right dosage of something. The devil's in the dosage, folks, right? Salt's not going to kill you. I promise you. Well, I can't promise you it's not going to kill you because I'm not a doctor, but it's good for you. Ask your doctor how much salt you need, right? If you're not having it from the crap, if you're not having any boxed food, you're not having any garbage processed food anymore, where are you going to get your salt? Think about it. You really need that salt. So don't forget. Like I said, fish, shrimp, scallops. I mean, you can do shrimp on the barbecue. Probably one of my wife's favorite meals. Shrimp on the barbecue. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Okay, folks, I'm excited to talk about smoking. Right? No, not cigarettes, not smoking a joint, not smoking anything terrible. I'm talking about smoking food. I just recently, a week, maybe 2 weeks now, started smoking my own food. Oh my God. It's amazing. It's amazing. I always loved smoked fish. I grew up in Northern Ontario. Shout out to Sault Ste. Marie. Shout out to Garden River. Shout out to Rankin Reserve. Amazing smoked fish all around our area, from Echo Bay, Sault Ste. Marie, all over the place. It was always, even up north. I can't think of all the places now up there. Everywhere up the Montreal River, I'm sure. Even up Thunder Bay. All along. Traditionally, this is why, one of the reasons why I love smoking fish and smoking food, but smoking fish specifically, is that it completely makes sense that this would have been done. Completely makes sense. First of all, if you smoke your own fish at home, you realize how easy it is and how amazing it is. Like the combination of how easy it is and how good it is. You almost want to get mad at yourself for not doing this 10 years ago. I'm telling you, folks, get a smoker, smoke some fish. You smoke everything else, but the first thing you want to smoke is fish. It's amazing. Whitefish is amazing. I haven't tried homemade smoked lake trout yet, but it's probably going to be great because I grew up eating lake trout and whitefish. Smoked rainbow trout, amazing. We had that a couple weeks ago. Smoked salmon. My wife, bless her, she got a big chunk of salmon, a big fillet, one whole side of salmon, Atlantic salmon. I put it on there, and it's the best way to eat salmon. It's the best way to eat salmon. It's the best. It's even better than sushi, and I think sushi is probably the best. But I think now this is the best way. You can cook it, and you can smoke it. Perfect example. Put a salmon in there, fillet of salmon. You can put it in the smoker for 190 degrees for 2 hours, 3 hours maybe. Let it sit for another hour after that. Boom, it's done. You can eat it then, or you can eat it when it's hot, or you can let it sit the next day, put it in the fridge, which is amazing, and the next day it's cold and it's just like off the store. Actually, I shouldn't even say that. Slap myself. It's not just like the store. It's 10 times better than the store. It's healthier than the store. It doesn't have any extra preservatives. I'm sure a lot of the stuff at the store is probably pretty good as well, if it comes from a pretty natural source. But you get a fish, you cut it open, you fillet it, you smoke it. Oh, and what did I put on the smoked fish? I'll give you one guess. Salt. I use salt, folks. I'm going to use salt on everything, right? You know why? I need that sodium. You need your chloride. You need potassium levels. You need everything up in balance. Magnesium. And salt is that master buffer electrolyte, right? You need your salt. You need your sodium in check before so everything else will run right. So get that and get it in check. When you smoke fish, I'm telling you, if you like fish at all, it's going to be your favorite way to eat fish. If you don't like fish, try it anyway, because this may win you over. I'm telling you, folks, try it. It's amazing. Again, salt. I put salt and I'll be honest, I'll share with you. I kind of messed up a little bit on a bunch of them. I just put salt, and on one of them I put salt and then a few slices, very, very thin slices of lime. I was like, maybe this will be good. It wasn't that good. Lime, citrus doesn't smoke that good. They smoke that well. And I'm sure everybody listening to me, all 5 of you, are probably saying, yeah, I know, Carlo. You should have asked me. I should have asked you. But it doesn't matter. I'm not going to use lime anymore to smoke. Maybe in some sort of a marinade, but something about the vinegar. I don't know if it's probably a known thing. But the rest of the fish was absolutely delicious. Again, the salmon, just salt, folks, right over it. It's amazing. And it proves which is very, very heartwarming and comforting to me, that you don't need anything else, right? Like every time I see a natural solution that needs nothing but something like fish and salt, or the fish and the salt water that it comes in, you know what I mean? We've always had access to salt water. So that means we've always had access to salt, right? There's many ways of getting salt and retrieving salt, and all over the world, we know how to make salt, or we know how to get salt, whether it's from mineral mines and things like that, or just from the ocean. So it makes complete sense to me, and it's very, very basic to me that you just add a little bit of salt to your fish. And if you're curious, again, 190 degrees, 190 Fahrenheit, that is, for around 2 to 3 hours. I did mine around 2. It depends on how big the fish is. That bigger piece of salmon, I think, was maybe even closer to 4 hours. But just check it out, monitor it, right? It gives you an excuse to go out there with a drink. It gives you an excuse to go out there and kind of check and learn. You know, the first couple times you're going to do it, you're going to want to monitor it. But you know, that smoker, it's such an amazing thing. So it's quite easy if you think about it. I have a Bradley, very basic, I think one of the bottom of the line, but it basically has a stack that holds these little pucks, right? These little compressed wood pellet pucks, or wood chip pucks rather. Different flavor. Maple wood is my favorite. There's alder wood, I think that's called. There's mesquite. There's apple. There's a bunch of different flavors you can get, but I like maple so far. It is my favorite. And but it comes, you stack these little wooden pucks in a little kind of a hopper, really, or just a tube, really, and it's on a little box. You push a button and it just moves as a conveyor, and it kind of feeds the pucks into this element, which is sitting inside of basically like a little bar fridge, right? If you've ever seen a Bradley or any smoker, but any of these little stand-up Bradley smokers, it's like a little bar fridge. So there's a dial on it that sets the temperature, and then there's just a little button to turn the temperature, turn the whole unit on and the smoker on, and it kind of just feeds when you want to move that puck onto an element that creates a smoke. You just push that button. So you kind of do that throughout the day. Every half hour or so, you're going to check that, monitor it, and see how it goes. So in 2 or 3 hours or 4 hours, you can do something like I said, a big piece of salmon, maybe 3 hours, some small pieces, a couple hours, small pieces of fish, a couple hours. Beef, I put it in for 6 hours, I believe, 6 hours in the smoker. Same idea, really around 250, 240. The internal temperature of beef, I like to get it around 170, 180. And not even, it doesn't have to get that high, but it can, I think 150 or 160 even. Probably 160 is like a rare, or maybe I'm off a couple of those numbers. But basically, I like to get it where it's not going to be, I'm going to take it off before it's well done and kind of just let it rest. It definitely gets over the well done mark. But with the, when you wrap, especially that slow cooking, right? I didn't mention that, but when I take that oven, I take that big roast or whatever it is, that big piece of meat out of the slow roaster, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, you want to wrap that right away in tin foil or something that's going to keep that warm. Set it aside for an hour. You want to continue cooking, but also let it marinate, or let it just really just dance in that juice and just sit in that juice and get all those flavors. So I think same thing with the smoker. Take it out, let it rest a bit. The smoker I probably could have taken out, or the beef brisket I put in, it was probably about a 4-pound brisket. I probably could have put in a little less, maybe 4 hours or so, but it was still delicious, and it was amazing. Ribs, same idea. It was a little bit lower temperature, so again, still Fahrenheit, Beef was at 250. Fish was at 190. For ribs, I put it around 220. Again, folks, 20 or 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, it's not going to be a huge difference, but it will take a different amount of time. So if you are going to put it lower, you probably will need to have it a little longer. Different meats cook at different temperatures, but you want to be safe, right? And again, the ribs were amazing. When I did ribs, actually, when I did most of my pork, I found that I really liked it after I smoked it and then I put it on the barbecue. The ribs especially were amazing. I smoked the ribs the first time, just salt, even just salt and pepper, I believe, yes. And then when I finished them on the barbecue, they're great. The second time I actually didn't finish them on the barbecue, I just chopped them up and they were great as they were. So you can do any kind of meat. Like I said, when it comes to ribs and pork, I really like onions. I really like garlic, goes well. But I really like onions and garlic on all the meat. Yeah, but like I said, for the smoker though, I didn't add anything. Sorry. For the smoker, I did. I basically did the same sort of rub on the beef and the pork as I did in the slow roaster or in the oven as I do on the smoker, right? So any sort of rub you see or any sort of marinade, a lot of people will marinate their meat overnight, or you can even put in a brine, right, which is a salt water solution for a couple days if you want. Get that salt in there, really start kind of tenderizing, and the smoking, they'll basically end up like a ham or corned beef, right? Corned beef or pastrami basically is a brine smoked Montreal smoked meat. That's how they get it, right? And then a ham is essentially the same thing, but for pork. It's salted and it's smoked. And it's funny, I did a pork tenderloin. Now it's not pink like it is at the store, right? Because I didn't add any nitrates and to keep the color and all that stuff. But it turned out to be like, a light brown or even a white on some of the areas because it was a tenderloin. But it tasted like ham. It was amazing. It was so good. And very, very simple again, right? So the other types of cooking are very simple. Again, you can always pan fry. I don't particularly like to pan fry. However, on a cast iron, it's a different story. I do like to do some steaks on a cast iron. It's a nice way to get a great crust on it, then also kind of use that butter and kind of baste it as well. And you can do that with anything, right? You can pan fry steak, pork, chicken, fish fry. I mean, I used to pan fry fish quite a bit when I was a little bit younger. But like I said, cast iron, or even just any kind of pan. You don't want to burn it, obviously. You don't want to have it too hot. You don't want to have it hotter than your pan can take. You don't also want to cook something hotter than your oil can manage it, right? So when you're frying something, it's a good time to talk, I guess, a little bit about oil. But if you're pan frying something, I would prefer, and I would always recommend pan frying with something like lard, if you have access to lard, if you eat lard, something with butter. Butter will burn though a little bit more, right? Lard will have a higher smoking point. Beef tallow is even better probably. I believe it has even a higher smoking point than lard does. But coconut oil is another one, right? Higher smoking point. These are saturated fats, right? And again, a reminder, saturated fats are the most stable types of fat at room temperature, which also then translates to a higher smoking point in the case for saturated fats. Lard from pork, beef, tallow from beef, right? Chicken fat, goose fat, any kind of fat, rendered fat from an animal is going to have a higher higher saturated fat content. So try and do that, right? If you're going to pan fry, I would recommend to use something like butter or lard or tallow or drippings or bacon. Bacon fat is a great thing to use. Bacon grease. If you're cooking bacon, you're going to save that grease for something, right? A lot of times people like to save it. It's great. Not only is it a way to save money, but it's great flavor. If you want to have that smoky flavor of the bacon, then it's a great way to kind of just add that when to stir fry. Oh, another thing I should add to the smoker, I can't believe I forgot this, but bacon, right? Bacon has traditionally been smoked. Pork belly, salted, maybe for a couple of days, maybe in a brine. It depends. Everybody's a little different. Or maybe in that brine might just be salt, or it might be spices, maple, or different types of flavors. And then you just smoke it, right? And then we slice it and we fry it. So bacon is something that we've been smoking for a long, long time. Just touch on that. But pan frying, again, folks, I think the key to pan frying, or the key to have healthy pan frying, delicious pan frying, is using good oil. And again, salt and any seasonings you want. You can, of course, pair any of this with any sort of vegetable, any sort of other food you want. But I'm not talking about that today. We're talking about meat today. And again, this is Fatso Radio, right? And I do the carnivore thing. I'm more and more into the carnivore thing. Doesn't mean I'm against plants completely. I had some plants tonight. We actually ordered Chinese food, so I had some beef and a little bit of onions and vegetables. It was cool. But really, it's the meat that I go after, and that's when I feel the best eating, right? It's not that I have a crusade against plants per se. I'm on a mini crusade against sugar, but not specifically against plants. But I come from the point of, if I'm not needing it, and if I don't really feel like I want it, and it's helping me, then what's the point? The last thing is, I guess, stir fry, I guess, is another way to cook. I'm probably missing a bunch of ways to cook, guys. There's a lot of old-fashioned ways, a lot of new ways. Sous vide is a way I haven't talked about yet. I don't have much experience on it, so I won't talk about it. But if you have a good experience with sous vide, or if you have some instructions or some advice on how to do it, let me know. But stir fry, same idea, guys. I used to, my wife and I oftentimes would get those thin steaks, chop them up real thin, throw them in a wok with some, at that time we would use like sesame oil or something. I now wouldn't use sesame oil. I'd probably use, although it's still okay. I would probably now use something like lard. However, for my wife, she doesn't eat pork, so I would use tallow preferably, or then just butter, right? Of course, you can use a little bit of olive oil. Olive oil doesn't have the highest smoking point, but it's okay. But yeah, it's a meat or whatever it is, chicken, pork, throw it in there, fry it up, cook it fast, and whether it's over vegetables or not. There's so many different ways to cook meat. My theme, and I hope you're getting my theme for today, and I'm going to keep this short today, I hope, guys, but my theme is to, again, keep it simple. I always say that, but is to really explore the different ways to cook, right? Explore the different ways to eat food, and explore them in different seasons as well, right? Barbecuing, we all know summertime comes barbecuing. In the winter, a lot of times people are home, the pot roast, right? But mix it up a bit. It's summertime, it's a great time to go outside and smoke, right? And do that. And when you do that, and the more you cook, especially when you're cooking meat, I don't know what it is, maybe it's especially when you're cooking meat outside, here's my opinion, we tap into the primalness of us. We tap into the natural point, or the natural part of us, where or the natural part of our memory, I guess what I'm saying, because we have it in us, right? We came from the people who discovered fire and hunted and gathered, and we came from the people who have found the best way to do that, and the most efficient way to do that, and the best way to keep their animals healthy and happy to do that. Remember, this was all part of it, right? Things are getting better as time goes on. So let's not forget that. Let's not think that, and let's not forget that it's still a healthy choice to eat meat, and it's still a moral choice to eat meat, if you're doing what's best for you, and if you're doing it in the most, or the best way possible, or the best way that you can, at least, right? The thing is, folks, nobody's perfect, and there's always an optimal way to do something. There's always an optimal, most ethical way to do something. It's not always in the cards for us. When I talk about meat, oftentimes I talk about eating meat, I promote meat, I promote eating fat. And oftentimes there's questions on where you're getting your meat from, whether it's grocery stores, or whether it's the farmer an hour away, or whether it's the farmer 5 minutes down the road. I can only speak for Canada, but we are very, very lucky in Canada. We have good standards, very, very high standards, and all the meat in Canada is good. Whether it's whether it's factory raised, or whether it's small farm where they have 10 cows, or whether there's 1,000 cows, we have standards in every country. I mean, the United States has standards as well. In Canada, I know we don't allow hormones. We don't allow antibiotics into our meat. So the meat is safe no matter where you go. I talk to a grass-fed farmer, Rick. I talk to him all the time. Rick, shout out to Rick and Lisa. I talk to them all the time, and even coming out of literally the farmer's mouth himself. He's a grass-fed farmer, right? He's a pastured farmer. He raises animals on the pasture. He and Lisa even said, of course, the meat in our stores is good, because we have standards, right? And he would say that his meat maybe is better. Of course, he would probably argue that it tastes better. I'd probably argue that too, but the meat is safe, right? So I'm not telling people to eat unhealthy stuff. I'm not telling you to eat fat from a vegetable oil. I'm not telling you to drink canola oil. I would never tell you to do that. I'm telling you not even to fry with canola oil. Don't fry with any vegetable oils. I just read an article today. I'm going to dig a little deeper. It's from Abel James, but I'm going to dig a little deeper into peanut oil. Apparently there's something special about peanut oil. I'm going to find out what it is. But technically it's a plant, right? It's a vegetable. So again, folks, beef tallow, pork lard, coconut oil is a good saturated fat. Avocado oil is a good saturated fat. Olive oil, right, is not saturated fat, but it's a fruit oil. It's like I said, I always say the only fruit oils I recommend are avocado, olive oil, and coconut oil. They're not at the top of my list, but they're at the top of the non-animal list. There's only 3 I have in that list, and those 3. But animals, again, lard, tallow, any other fat you can get from fish, whatever you can get. If you can get whale blubber, get whale blubber. I'm sure it's absolutely nutritious as well. And that's another thing, and maybe I want to close out on this, but let's remember, folks, that eating a high-fat diet or a higher fat diet is good for your immune system. It really is. There's a lot of nutrient-dense foods that come with fat. There's a lot of vitamins that are paired with fat, vitamin A, D, K. You need fat for these vitamins. You need it. Meat, for example, has a lot of B vitamins. If you want vitamin C, go get it in the liver. The debate is out. The debate is still out on how much vitamin C you actually need, especially if you're not having a lot of carbohydrates in your system. So check it out. But it's good for us. Vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin K, like I said, those fat-soluble vitamins, we need them. We need fat in our diet in order to not only to transport them, but to use them and to better utilize them. They come with they come with fat sources, but we also need fat to process them. Things like cholesterol we need, which only comes from an animal source. Remember, folks, we need cholesterol in our body, right? The best way to get cholesterol, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, is from your food source. The kind of cholesterol that your body makes is not the same kind of cholesterol that you eat. The kind of cholesterol you eat is good, and it's good for you. And the kind and the cholesterol levels that may raise when you eat things like animals and saturated fat is the good cholesterol, oftentimes the HDL, right? And it lowers the other marker, which is triglycerides. It's not cholesterol, but it's in that the lipid panel. Lowering triglycerides is a very, very good thing. So keep that in mind as well. Folks, that's what I wanted to get into. I want to get into how I'm cooking my food, how I'm preparing my food, all the time on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, probably even. I'm putting pictures of my steak. I'm putting pictures of my pork chops that I got from Charles Meats, or I got meat from Papaearth. Shout out to Papaearth. Or my steaks or my pork chops from Rick and Lisa at Double D Pastures. Shout out to Double D, the boys, and Lisa, of course. But that's what it is. And again, simple, right? We didn't have, just think about it, 100,000 years ago, right? Or 10,000 years ago, or 200 years ago, maybe 200 years ago. But we didn't have these elaborate recipes, and people lived just fine. People lived just happy, and people were happy, right? There was still art, there were still creations, there was still song, there was still dance, people were happy, they were procreating, right? Without the need for a complex way to feed themselves. I guess that's what I'm saying. So check it out, folks. Try the barbecue, try the slow cooker, try the smoker, pan frying, whatever you do. Let me know. Send me an email. Give me a shout out. fatsoradio@gmail.com. Don't forget to hit me up on Facebook. Fatso Radio is our page, our Facebook group. Fatso Radio, No Bullshit and Diet. I think it's called No Bullshit Diet and Fitness Group. Fatso Radio on Instagram, Radio Fatso on Twitter, and again, fatsoradio@gmail.com. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks again to our sponsors, Papaearth.ca. Don't forget to use the code word Fatso Meat. Save yourself $10 off a small box or $20 off a large box. And always, this episode is brought to you by Volpe Martial Arts. That's right, folks. Volpe Martial Arts is Kitchener and Waterloo's and Guelph and Cambridge hottest, newest Kung Fu and Hapkido. That's right. Kung Fu, Chinese martial arts, Hapkido, Korean martial art, an amazing fusion. My brother, Sifu Adam, amazing Sifu. And he brings it all together. He brings it with love. He brings it with passion. I go there, I train, we sweat our ass off, and it's an amazing time, folks. So check them out, and don't forget to check out everything that I mentioned are our sponsors. Thank you so much for all your love, folks. Spread the podcast, spread the love. If you take one bit of this and it helps you, spread the love to the people that you love. Thank you so much for everything. I love you all. Fatso Radio loves you. Violet, take it away. Let's say bye to everybody. Bye. And we'll say thanks for listening. Say thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.